Next called the technician, their voice monotone yet efficient, as if herding cattle rather than processing new recruits. The line moved forward, boots scuffing the pristine metallic floor of the recruitment center. Liam Kersey adjusted the strap of his duffel bag over his shoulder and took a deep breath. He was almost at the front of the line, surrounded by the hum of machinery and the faint antiseptic tang of the bioscanners. This was the final step before he could officially join the crew of the Orion Ascendant, one of the most advanced exploratory vessels in the intergalactic fleet. Name asked the technician as Liam stepped up to the desk. Liam Kersey. The technician tapped on a console, eyes scanning the screen. Doc D Bay 12. Next stop, mandatory biometrics and DNA sequencing. You've read the waiver. Yeah, Liam said, his voice betraying a hint of nerves. It's just protocol, right? No big deal. Sure. No big deal, the technician replied flatly, motioning him toward the scanners. Liam followed the directions, stepping into a small, glass-enclosed chamber. The machine whirred to life, beams of light tracing his body as a soothing synthetic voice instructed him to remain still. He watched as a faint green glow moved from his toes to his head, finishing with a sharp beep. All done, the voice chimed. Please exit the scanner. As Liam stepped out, he saw a man in a crisp black uniform standing nearby. The man wore the insignia of fleet security, his expression unreadable as he nodded at the technician. That's him, the officer asked. The technician glanced at her console and then back at Liam. Yeah, that's the one. Sequence flagged. Excuse me, Liam interjected, a nervous laugh escaping him. Is there a problem? The officer didn't answer directly. Instead, he motioned for Liam to follow him. Come with me. The unease settled in Liam's chest like a lead weight. Wait, hold on. What's going on? I thought this was just routine. Standard protocol, the officer said, his tone giving no room for argument. We need to confirm some irregularities. Irregularities. The word buzzed in Liam's head like an alarm. He followed the officer down a narrow corridor, past other recruits and bustling technicians who barely spared him a glance. They entered a sterile room filled with advanced equipment that looked more medical than administrative. 2 scientists in white coats were already waiting. Please sit, one of them said, gesturing toward a chair with a restraint mechanism. Liam hesitated. I think there's been a mistake. I'm just here to join the Orion Ascendant. Whatever irregularities you think there are, I'm sure they're just. Please sit, the scientist repeated, this time with an edge of authority. Reluctantly, Liam sat. The restraints clicked into place automatically, making his pulse quicken. One of the scientists approached with a small device, scanning his wrist and then his temple. The other was tapping away at a console, data scrolling rapidly across the screen. Subject sequence confirmed, the first scientist said, frowning. It's not a false positive. Okay, Liam said, his voice cracking slightly. Can someone tell me what's going on? The officer, who had been standing silently in the corner, finally spoke. Your DNA contains foreign sequences that are not consistent with human baseline genetics. These sequences are not from Earth or any known human settlement. Liam blinked. Foreign sequences? What does that even mean? It means, the second scientist said, looking up from the console, that part of your DNA isn't human. Or at least not entirely. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Liam's mind raced, grasping for some kind of explanation. That's impossible. I've lived on Earth my whole life. My parents are human. I'm human. That's what we intend to determine, the officer said, his expression still unreadable. This could be a contamination issue, a rare mutation, or something. More significant. We'll need to conduct further tests. Liam's stomach churned. Further tests? You can't just. I didn't sign up for this. You did, actually, the officer replied. The waiver you signed allows for additional testing in cases of medical or genetic anomalies. Cooperate, and this will go much faster. Before Liam could protest further, one of the scientists approached with a small injector. This will just collect a deeper sample. It won't hurt. Liam braced himself as the injector pressed against his arm, a faint hiss accompanying the collection process. The scientist stepped back, inspecting the vial of glowing blue liquid it had extracted. "We'll need to analyze this," she said, handing it to her colleague. "This could take a few hours." The officer nodded. "Contact his parents in the meantime. If this is hereditary, we'll need their cooperation." "My parents," Liam said, alarmed. "Why do they need to be involved?" "If the sequences are present in your DNA," the officer explained, "there's a chance they originated from one of your parents. We'll need to test them to confirm." Liam felt a wave of nausea. He hadn't seen his parents in months, not since he'd left for fleet training. He couldn't imagine how they'd react to a call like this. "Fine," he muttered, slumping back in the chair. "But you better figure this out fast. I've got a ship to join." The officer gave him a thin smile that didn't reach his eyes. "We'll see." Hours later, Liam sat in a small holding room, the walls featureless and the air stale. The door finally opened, and the officer stepped in, followed by a hollow screen displaying the faces of his parents, their expressions a mix of confusion and concern. "Liam," his mother said, her voice trembling slightly. "What's going on?" "They said there's something wrong with your DNA." "Not wrong," Liam said quickly. "Just weird. They need to test you and Dad too." His father frowned. "Test us for what?" The officer stepped forward. "We've detected foreign DNA in your son's genetic profile. We need to determine whether it was inherited or introduced through external means." "Foreign DNA," his mother echoed, her voice rising. "What does that even mean?" "It means," the officer said patiently, "that part of his genetic code does not match the human genome as we know it." Liam's father looked skeptical. "And you think this came from one of us?" "That's what we're here to find out." The officer gestured toward the holo screen, and a pair of robotic arms extended toward Liam's parents, holding small injectors similar to the one used on him. His parents exchanged a worried glance but ultimately nodded, allowing the devices to take their samples. As the data began to process, the room fell into an uneasy silence. Liam's mind whirled with possibilities. He thought of every childhood story, every bedtime reassurance that he was 100% human, as his dad used to joke. Yet here he was, at the center of something that defied everything he thought he knew about himself. The console beeped, breaking the silence. The scientists from earlier entered, their expressions grave as they examined the data. While the officer prompted. The lead scientist hesitated, then turned to Liam's father. "The foreign sequences are present in your DNA as well. This appears to be hereditary." Liam's father went pale, his jaw tightening. "That's not possible. I'm human. Just like my parents were." "Are you sure?" the scientist asked pointedly. The room went silent again, heavier this time. Liam looked at his father, searching for any sign of reassurance. Instead, he saw something he'd never seen before: doubt. Liam stared at his father, his mind grappling with the words he'd just heard. His dad had always been steady, unshakable, a man of simple truths and easy reassurances. But now, in the stark light of the examination room, he looked deeply unsettled, as though someone had unearthed a secret even he didn't know he was keeping. "Dad," Liam finally said, his voice quiet but loaded with expectation. "I don't know," his father replied, shaking his head. "I swear, Liam, I don't even know what to make of this." The scientist folded her arms, tilting her head in consideration. "It's not uncommon for ancient or dormant sequences to remain hidden in genomes, only to emerge after generations. However, these sequences aren't dormant, they're active. And they don't align with any known terrestrial biology. This isn't some evolutionary relic." Liam's mother, still visible on the holoscreen, looked as if she might faint. "Are you saying my husband and my son aren't human?" The scientist hesitated. "Not entirely, no." Liam felt like the ground had been yanked out from under him. "Okay, hold on," he said, standing up so fast his chair scraped across the floor. "If you're saying there's something not human in us, where did it come from? Someone has to know, right?" The officer, still calm but with a steel edge in his tone, stepped forward. "We don't know yet. But this isn't the first instance of unexplained genetic anomalies. You and your father might be connected to a much larger mystery, one that goes beyond Earth." Liam threw up his hands. Great. So now I'm a walking mystery. Not just you, the scientist interjected, her tone turning clinical. But your father's profile shows the same sequences but with less variability. That suggests the foreign DNA originated with him and has recombined or changed in you. If we trace the lineage further back, we might be able to pinpoint its origin. Back to where Liam's father demanded, his voice rising. You're acting like this is all normal, but I've never been anywhere except Earth. I was born in Bellingham, grew up there, and lived there until the day I met Sarah. There's nothing alien about me. The scientist raised an eyebrow. Are you absolutely certain of your ancestry? Records can be incomplete, even fabricated. Fabricated, his dad repeated, incredulous. What, you think my parents were aliens in disguise? Or their parents, the officer suggested coolly. Okay, this is ridiculous, Liam cut in, his frustration boiling over. How about you stop accusing my family of being secret aliens and figure out what's going on? That's exactly what we're trying to do, the scientist replied. To start, we'll need access to your father's birth records, medical history, and if possible, DNA samples from his parents. They're dead, Liam's dad said bluntly. They've been gone for years, and as far as records go, good luck. My dad was from some backwater mining colony, and paperwork wasn't exactly a priority. The officer's expression tightened. That complicates matters. Liam ran a hand through his hair, feeling trapped. So what happens now? You're not going to lock us up in some lab, are you? The officer waved off the idea. Nothing like that. But until we know more, both of you will need to remain under observation. This isn't just about you, this could have implications for interstellar relations. Interstellar relations, Liam's mother repeated, her voice trembling. Are you saying this is bigger than Earth? The scientist nodded grimly. It's possible. We've encountered anomalous DNA before, but never with this level of activity or coherence. If this is linked to an extraterrestrial species, it could explain phenomena we've been studying for decades. And given the timing of your son's recruitment, it's also possible his presence aboard a fleet ship could trigger a response. A response from who, Liam asked, narrowing his eyes. That's what we intend to find out. Liam and his father were moved to a more secure facility within the fleet complex, though it was clear they weren't prisoners, at least not officially. The room was more comfortable than the sterile examination chamber, with soft chairs and a panoramic window offering a view of Earth's curvature. But the sense of surveillance was constant, every move monitored by subtle cameras embedded in the walls. Do you believe any of this? Liam asked his dad as they sat across from each other, a steaming cup of synthetic coffee between them. His father let out a long breath, rubbing his temples. I don't know, son. I've never felt different. Never had any reason to think I wasn't just like everyone else. But this DNA stuff, that's not something you can fake. Liam frowned. You said Grandpa was from a mining colony. Which one? Someplace called Cobalt Reach, his dad said. It was out past Mars near one of the asteroid belts. Rough place, people went there to dig up resources, not to build family trees. Did he ever talk about his past? His dad shook his head. Not much. He was a quiet man. Kept to himself. I just thought that was his way. Before Liam could press further, the door slid open, and the officer walked in, followed by one of the scientists. They carried a portable console that projected a holographic map of the solar system. We've been digging into your family history, the officer began. What little we could find suggests your grandfather wasn't born on Cobalt Reach. He was brought there as a child from an unknown location. Liam's dad stiffened. What do you mean unknown? The scientist pointed to a highlighted area on the map, far beyond Earth's settled territories. Records suggest he arrived on a small transport ship, unregistered and carrying only one passenger, your grandfather. The ship's origin was never determined, and it was written off as a fluke. Liam stared at the glowing map, his heart pounding. So you think he wasn't from Earth? It's a strong possibility, the scientist said. If that transport was alien in origin, it could explain the genetic anomalies. But why drop a kid on a mining colony, Liam asked. That doesn't make any sense. That, the officer said, is what we're trying to figure out. We've already dispatched a team to Cobalt Reach to see if there's any surviving evidence. Liam's dad sank back in his chair, looking utterly drained. You're telling me my dad might have been some alien experiment? Not necessarily, the scientist said. He could have been a refugee, or even an emissary. Until we know more, it's all speculation. Liam rubbed his temples, feeling the weight of it all pressing down on him. So what happens to us? Are we just supposed to sit here while you figure it out? For now, yes, the officer said. Your DNA could be a key to understanding something we've only scratched the surface of. Until we're sure there's no risk, we can't let either of you leave. Liam exchanged a glance with his dad. The realization was sinking in this wasn't going to be resolved quickly. Whatever had been buried in their DNA was about to upend their entire understanding of who they were and what it meant for humanity. Days blurred into one another as Liam and his father remained under observation. The sterile environment began to feel more like a gilded cage, with every visit from the officers or scientists raising more questions than answers. Liam had taken to pacing the room, his nerves fraying with each passing hour. His father, ever the stoic, sat quietly in a chair, staring out at the faint curvature of Earth through the window. Do you think they'll ever let us go? Liam finally asked, breaking the silence. His dad shrugged. Depends on what they find out. If what they're saying is true. I'm not sure they can. Before Liam could respond, the door opened, and the officer entered, accompanied by the lead scientist. Both looked unusually tense. The officer gestured for them to sit, and Liam's stomach twisted. This was not going to be good news. We have updates, the scientist began, setting a portable console on the table. A 3D hologram sprang to life, displaying a complex structure of genetic sequences. Our team at Cobalt Reach found something. It's significant. What does that mean? Liam's father asked, leaning forward. The scientist manipulated the hologram, highlighting a section of the sequence in glowing blue. This segment of foreign DNA has a specific arrangement we've never encountered before. It's highly structured, more like code than biology. We believe it was intentionally designed. Designed, Liam echoed, his pulse quickening. Are you saying this was engineered? The scientist nodded. Exactly. It's not natural evolution. This sequence was created and inserted into your genetic code, likely in your grandfather. Liam's father frowned, his jaw tightening. Inserted by who and why? That's where things get complicated, the officer said, taking over. The team also uncovered fragments of a distress signal embedded in the transport ship's black box. It was encrypted, but we managed to partially decode it. What did it say? Liam asked. The officer's voice grew quieter, more deliberate. It wasn't a message for help. It was a warning. The signal indicated that your grandfather was carrying something vital. It referred to him as a carrier. The word hit the room like a thunderclap. Liam looked at his dad, who appeared just as stunned. Carrier? Of what? The scientist hesitated, glancing at the officer before answering. We don't know. The message was incomplete, but it's possible the genetic code is part of whatever he was carrying. Liam's father shook his head, his voice rising. This is insane. You're telling me my father, who worked his whole life digging ore and barely made ends meet, was part of some alien plan, and now you think Liam and I are connected to this? The scientist nodded solemnly. That's exactly what we're saying, and we believe this genetic sequence is still active in both of you. It may be why Liam was flagged during the fleet screening. It could be reacting to the technology or something aboard the ships. Reacting how? Liam asked. We're not sure yet, the scientist admitted. But there's more. We cross-referenced the signal with known alien contact events and found a match. The sequence aligns with a species the fleet has long suspected exists, but has never formally encountered. They're referred to as the Oinari. The Oinari, Liam's father repeated, his brow furrowing. I've never heard of them. You wouldn't have, the officer said. The Oinari are a hypothetical species of theory based on scattered evidence. But if this genetic material is tied to them, it would be our first concrete proof of their existence. Liam's thoughts spiraled. So, what? We're part alien? Some kind of experiment? A delivery system for something? The scientist raised a hand. We're not jumping to conclusions. But there's one more piece of information you need to hear. The distress signal wasn't just a warning, it also contained a time frame. A countdown. A countdown to what Liam's father demanded. The officer's expression hardened. That's what we're trying to figure out. But whatever it is, the deadline is approaching. The revelation shifted everything. Suddenly, Liam and his father weren't just anomalies, they were potential keystones in a galactic puzzle. The security around them tightened, and the scientists worked day and night, analyzing their DNA for clues. Liam felt like a lab rat, his every movement scrutinized. One evening, as Liam sat staring at the stars, his father approached and placed a hand on his shoulder. "You doing okay?" Liam shrugged. "I don't even know what okay is anymore. Yesterday I thought I was just some guy trying to join a fleet crew. Now I'm, what? A genetic time bomb." "You're still my son," his father said firmly. "No matter what they find, that doesn't change." Liam managed a weak smile. "Thanks, Dad. But what about you? This has to be even harder for you. Grandpa, your dad, he's at the center of this, and he's not even here to explain it." His father sighed, sitting down beside him. "I keep thinking about all the times he could have said something, if he knew, but he never did. He just lived his life. Maybe he didn't know, or maybe he thought it didn't matter. I don't know if that makes it better or worse." Before Liam could respond, the door slid open, and the officer entered with an urgent expression. "We've got a situation." "What now?" Liam asked, standing up. The officer gestured for them to follow. "Our sensors detected a ship approaching Earth's atmosphere. It's not one of ours." Liam's heart skipped a beat. "An alien ship." The officer nodded. "We don't know if it's connected to the Oinari, but it's unlike anything we've seen. It's broadcasting a signal directed at you two." Liam and his father exchanged a stunned glance. "Directed it at us," his father repeated. "Yes," the officer said. "It matches the frequency of the distress signal we decoded from the transport ship. Whatever this is, they've come for you." Liam felt a chill run down his spine. "And what happens if we don't answer?" The officer's jaw tightened. "We're not sure, we want to find out." The room fell silent as the gravity of the situation settled over them. Liam took a deep breath, his mind racing. Whatever was coming, it was no longer something he could avoid. His DNA, his family, his very existence, it was all tied to something far larger than he'd ever imagined. And now it was here. The observation deck of the Fleet Command Center was packed with personnel, their faces lit by the soft glow of monitors and holographic projections. At the center of the room, an enormous display tracked the alien ship's trajectory as it moved closer to Earth's orbit. It was sleek and organic looking, its surface glinting with an iridescent sheen that seemed to shift and shimmer like a living thing. Liam and his father stood near the back of the room, flanked by the officer and the lead scientist. Neither of them spoke, the tension in the room suffocating. The ship was broadcasting a low, rhythmic signal, its frequency identical to the one encoded in their DNA. Whatever was coming, there was no doubt it was meant for them. "What's the plan?" Liam finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The officer crossed his arms. "We're holding position. The ship hasn't shown any hostile intent. For now, we're treating this as a first contact scenario. If they want to communicate, we'll listen." "And if they don't?" Liam's father asked, his tone sharp. The officer didn't answer. The scientist adjusted her tablet, bringing up a 3D model of the alien ship. Its energy signature suggests advanced propulsion and weapon systems, but they're powered down. They're not here to attack us. At least, not yet. Liam's father stepped closer to the display, his jaw tightening. "Then what do they want? Why now? If this is about my dad or whatever he was carrying, why wait decades to show up?" The scientist glanced at Liam and his father, her expression uneasy. "We think it's because of Liam. Something in his DNA must have activated recently. It might be tied to his proximity to fleet technology or something unique to the Orion Ascendant. Whatever it is, it acted as a beacon." "Great," Liam muttered. "So, I'm a walking intergalactic flare." Before anyone could respond, a low chime filled the room. The alien ship had stopped just outside Earth's orbit. The signal it was broadcasting shifted, becoming more complex, more deliberate. A second later, a beam of light shot from the ship, forming a holographic projection in the center of the room. The image was humanoid, but only vaguely. The figure had elongated limbs, translucent skin that seemed to pulse with light, and large, shimmering eyes that radiated an unnerving calm. Its voice, when it spoke, was resonant but eerily melodic, as though the words were part of a song. Designated carriers, it said, its gaze locking onto Liam and his father. Your presence is acknowledged. Liam's throat tightened. Carriers of what? The figure tilted its head slightly, as if studying him. You carry the key, a fragment of what was lost. It is incomplete but vital. The key, Liam's father said, his voice laced with frustration. What does that mean? What are you talking about? The figure's gaze shifted to him. You are the second-generation carrier. The key was placed within your progenitor to ensure its survival. You were not meant to understand, only to preserve. Preserve what Liam demanded, stepping forward. If this is so important, why didn't anyone tell us? Why let us live normal lives thinking we were just regular people? The alien's glowing eyes flickered, a gesture that might have been sympathy or indifference. Your progenitor was chosen because your world is remote, its inhabitants unremarkable. Secrecy was paramount. The key is a fragment of our consciousness, a safeguard against annihilation. We are the Oinari, the last remnants of a civilization undone by its own ambition. The room was silent as everyone absorbed the revelation. Liam's father looked stunned, but Liam felt a spark of anger bubbling beneath the surface. So, what Liam asked, his voice rising. You used us as some kind of backup drive? Turned my grandfather, my dad, and me into glorified storage units for your civilization. Do you have any idea what this has done to us? The alien's gaze remained calm. Your burden is acknowledged, but your role is essential. The key contains the knowledge to restore what was lost. Without it, we cannot rebuild. Liam's father shook his head, his frustration boiling over. Rebuild? You want us to just hand this over and hope you don't blow yourselves up again? Restoration is not destruction, the alien replied. The key is incomplete, fractured by time and entropy. It must be reunited with its source. That is why we have come. The officer stepped forward, his face hard. And what happens to them once you've taken it? Do they survive this process? The alien turned its gaze to him. The carriers will endure. The process is non-destructive. Their essence will remain intact. Liam's father let out a bitter laugh. Well, that's comforting. Liam took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm in his mind. If we agree to this, if we give you what you want, what happens then? What's the point of all this? The restoration will mark a new beginning, the alien said. The Oinari will live again. Your role will be honored. You will be remembered as the bridge between extinction and rebirth. And if we say no, Liam asked, his voice quieter now. The alien didn't answer immediately. When it finally spoke, its tone was heavier. If the key is not restored, we will cease to exist. The carriers will remain as they are, unaltered but burdened by that which they cannot understand. The room fell silent again. Liam looked at his father, their eyes meeting in a shared moment of understanding. Neither of them had asked for this, but it was clear they were at a crossroads that couldn't be avoided. After a long pause, Liam nodded. Fine, we'll do it. His father hesitated but eventually nodded as well. Let's get this over with. The process took place aboard the alien ship. Liam and his father were guided into a chamber filled with a soft, luminous mist that seemed alive. As they stood in the center, the alien figure approached, its hands glowing with an otherworldly light. This will not harm you, it said, its voice softer now. You are not giving something up. You are sharing what was entrusted to you. The light from its hands enveloped them, and Liam felt a strange warmth radiating through his body. It wasn't painful, if anything. It was comforting, like a memory he'd forgotten but suddenly remembered. He closed his eyes, and for a brief moment, he saw flashes of a world he couldn't recognize, towering crystalline structures, skies filled with shimmering colors, and beings that moved like living light. When it was over, the alien stepped back. The mist dissipated, and the room felt still. "It is done," the alien said. "The key is whole." Liam opened his eyes, feeling strangely light, as though a weight he hadn't realized he was carrying had been lifted. His father looked at him, and for the first time in days, there was no trace of fear in his expression, only relief. "What now?" Liam asked. The alien inclined its head. "Now we rebuild. You may return to your lives. The burden is no longer yours to bear." As Liam and his father were escorted back to their shuttle, he couldn't help but feel a strange mix of emotions: relief, curiosity, and a lingering sense of wonder. They had been a part of something vast, something incomprehensible, and now it was over.